The PlayStation Classic has to be, to me, one of the most fascinating, if not the most fascinating gaming stories of 2018. Sure, there's been many contenders that would have to be up there in the realm of gaming disasters in 2018, such as Fallout 76. That situation really got out of control very fast. People got screwed if they tried to get the $200 collector's edition and get the canvas bag, instead got a nylon bag. And of course, now there's a whole bunch of litigation, lawsuits, and a bunch of fan outcry about that game. You, of course, had the Diablo Immortal situation, where Blizzard thought they could pander to the BlizzCon audience and give them a mobile game instead of something that they actually wanted, and then they were shocked at the backlash and outcry for Diablo Immortal. And then, of course, you have Soulja Boy. I mean, really, what more can you say about Soulja Boy? This man is absolutely crazy and releasing systems every week. But the PlayStation Classic, to me, has to be the most fascinating story of 2018 when it comes to gaming, because this should have been a surefire hit. On paper, this sounds like it'll generate tons of revenue for Sony, really bring the PlayStation brand into people's minds more so than it already has been, and should have been a great nostalgia trip for PlayStation 1 owners. But instead, we got what we got. So in this video, I basically want to chronicleize the rise and the fall of the PlayStation Classic. What exactly went wrong, because it is official, this thing is an absolute flop. So sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's go down memory road one more time with the PlayStation Classic.
Hey, RGT 85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my God, it's Stevie Richards! So like I said, this is pretty much my ode to farewell with the PlayStation Classic. This will probably be my last video on the system unless something really cool comes along in the world of hacking with the system. But it's a system that I've talked about a ton on this channel, because I remember when the system was first announced a couple months ago, and I was genuinely excited for this thing. It was like 2 a.m. I'm laying in bed and the PlayStation Classic was announced, and you got that initial trailer for the system, and I'm sitting there watching this trailer like, wow, that looks really, really cool. This is something really worth talking about, and I really want one of these because I love the PlayStation 1. There's so many timeless games on there, so many awesome games from JRPGs, games like Parasite Eve, Dino Crisis, and even if you love that game, Final Fantasy VII. And Final Fantasy VII and Tekken 3 were 2 of the 5 games that were announced initially with the system, and we were getting a total of 20 games. So I remember just laying in bed, I was talking to Billy from the Game Chasers and Wood, and I was like, yo, should I make a video on this? And they were like, yeah, it's kind of what you do. You talk about gaming news sometimes. So I decided to set up my lights and my camera at like 2:30 in the morning, shot the video, uploaded it at like 4 in the morning, and I was really genuinely excited for this system. I love plug and play systems. I love reviewing plug and play systems because they're easy. They're easy to use, they're easy to navigate, and they usually have some cool little features involved with the systems as well. So then, of course, the full roster of games for the PlayStation Classic was then revealed. The other 15 games that would be available on the system, and there was definitely some glaring omissions with this thing. You didn't have things like Crash Bandicoot and Tomb Raider, which a lot of people assimilate with the PlayStation brand. The Crash Bandicoot series and Tomb Raider series were actually some of the best-selling PlayStation 1 games of all time, yet for whatever reason, licensing issues, Sony didn't want to pony up the money and give it to Activision and whatnot to get these brands on there. They didn't put these games on there. Now, there were some good games on there. There was definitely some stinkers that were announced as well, but I felt like in the grand scheme of things, there was enough good stuff on there to tap into that PlayStation 1 nostalgia. And then, of course, we got initial previews of the system, and things seemed to be a bit rocky. There was a bunch of issues such as lag input and display issues. The menu system was very clunky and not original and just very boring, a very no-frills sort of system. And when you compare it to why the NES and the SNES Classic were so successful, it's because those systems did pack a little bit of a punch. You know, when you booted up the system and you looked at the menus of these systems, they were fun. There was little box art, there was some music playing, you could do different things with the filters and the stretching of the screen. You couldn't do any of that with the PlayStation Classic though, and it seemed like maybe this was going to be a cheap cash grab, but I tried to remain positive with the system because I was still going to buy one. I still wanted to check it out. I still wanted to own one of these. Of course, a few days before my review, we got information that some of the games on the PlayStation Classic would be using the PAL versions of these games, which means that they would run slower than they should in NTSC mode. And that's a big problem, especially when you're talking about a game like Tekken 3. Tekken 3 was definitely one of the crown jewels of the PlayStation Classic, in my opinion. And Tekken 3 is known for running at 60 frames per second. It was a buttery smooth PS1 PS1 game. And then when you actually play Tekken 3 on the PlayStation Classic, it's like, wow, this sucks. It's so slow. There's input lag. This is not how Tekken 3 is supposed to run. How did Sony allow this? Now, of course, going back to the PAL versions of the games, there is the big question as to why the PAL versions of the games were on this system as opposed to the NTSC. Obviously, they should do it for different regions. In Japan, the PlayStation Classic got games like Parasite Eve on there, which were not available on the North American system. Now, many people seem to theorize that the reason that the PAL versions of these games were on there was because the PAL versions had more native languages built into it, so they could spread it across all of the systems without having to use different versions of the game, which I guess sort of makes sense from a business standpoint. You obviously want to keep costs as low as possible on this system, but from a consumer standpoint, that's just unacceptable. You want to play these games like you remember them, and the fact that you can't play these games as you remember them is just sucks. And when I actually was playing the PlayStation Classic and recording footage of games like Tekken 3 and playing games like Twisted Metal, which should run perfectly fine, there was no different version of Twisted Metal on this thing, but there was so much input lag. The fact that the only game I really had fun with on the system was Rayman, which is a 2D platformer, really just showcased how boring this system was, how cheap Sony went with this system. And you would think that they would want to tap into that NES and SNES Classic market because those systems have sold over 10 million units to date. They're very popular. And Sony obviously saw this as a way to get a good cash grab. Now, people feel that I've been unnecessarily hard on the PlayStation Classic, but I really haven't been, in my opinion. I just wanted this system to have basic features. Should I be able to stretch the screen if I want to? Yes. Should I be able to add borders to my screen? Yes. And should I be able to change things like scan lines? Yes. These are basic things that all of these systems do. That's one of the beautiful things about emulation. You're able to play these older games that you grew up playing and be able to experience them in the modern era on your HD television and having nice things like borders and screen stretching and different filters if you want them. But the PlayStation Classic was just, it was such a missed opportunity. And a lot of people have been very vocal about the PlayStation Classic, and now it has officially flopped. You can pretty much go anywhere. Of course, scalpers tried to stock up on these and sell them for more than they were worth. They tried to get $150, $200, but now these scalpers are actually just stuck with these systems. You could walk into a Best Buy, a Walmart, and see stacks and stacks of these systems just laying out there, begging to be brought home to some unsuspecting person who's just going to absolutely hate it. And now the system is actually on sale. Have you ever seen an NES or an SNES Classic on sale? Of course not. Everyone scalps these things. They still try to scalp them to this day. And I'm sure scalping is actually going to be worse whenever these systems are discontinued. But if you go to Target.com right now, you can actually pick up a PlayStation Classic for $75. You can go to Amazon and get a $75 PlayStation Classic as well with a $25 Amazon gift card. So this thing has just absolutely flopped, and it's a shame. It is an absolute shame because I think once you actually hack it, it's not a bad system. Once you're able to get into the emulator settings of the PlayStation Classic, you're actually able to switch things up. You're actually able to change things that you might want to change on this system, and it's just like, why wouldn't this be available to anyone? Why should I have to hack this system in order to experience these PlayStation games in a positive manner? It's just honestly such a shame, and I just wanted to do sort of one more video on the PlayStation Classic because it's a system that was pretty much made for me. I love retro gaming. I love plug-and-play systems. I buy all of these plug-and-play systems because they're fun. It's simple to set them up to my television. It's simple to set them up to my Elgato and capture footage of these games if I need to capture footage of these games. It makes my life a lot easier, and I love having these systems. They're cute little novelties and things like that. You can always hack them and do additional things, but I would at least like for the base system to have some fun on it. I would like for at least the base system to offer me something cool. I can take an NES Classic or an SNES Classic, not even modify it, and still have fun with it. And with the PlayStation Classic, I really feel like you just can't. And the fact that this system isn't selling well, the fact that it's on sale a mere 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks actually, after it has been released, just shows that this thing has officially flopped. This thing has just not gone well for Sony, and I think it's going to leave a sour taste in some gamers' mouths. Like, a lot of people expect PlayStation to potentially do more classic systems, but would you really trust them with another classic lineup of systems after the disaster of the PlayStation 1 Classic? I mean, I wouldn't, and I don't think a lot of others would either. So this is sort of my goodbye to the PlayStation Classic. It's been a very interesting time covering this system, but I feel like this is officially the biggest gaming flop of 2018. It's been one of the craziest stories of 2018. Something so simple, something that should have worked, just didn't work because Sony got lazy with the system. So let me know in the comment section down below what you think of the PlayStation Classic. Now that it's on sale at different retailers, are you interested in picking one up and hacking it? Or are you just going to stick with things like a RetroPie or just your original PlayStation 1 and your original PlayStation 1 games? Because honestly, that's probably one of the better ways to play it. And as always, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Check out other videos on the channel. I'll have links and cards to all of my PlayStation Classic coverage up until this point. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.